Dr. Chandra Higginbotham is one of the leading OBGYNs in the Houston area, and she's discussing food and medicine.
Good morning, or good afternoon, depending on when this recording is being aired. The cell, the final frontier. First, I want to thank the organizers of this conference for inviting me to share aspects of medicine from my perspective. I love to learn, and I love to teach. I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. This presentation is for educational purposes only and is intended for licensed healthcare professionals. These methods, approaches, and therapies are not substitutions for standard medical care. Practitioners are solely responsible for the care and treatment provided for their own patients. My objectives: to review the definition of health from a functional perspective, understand the role of root cause resolution to optimize and restore health, understand the role of the cell in the manifestation of disease, and how to support patients on their journey toward optimal health and wellness from a functional perspective. So let's get started. Who am I? My name is Chandra Higginbotham. I am an OBGYN practicing conventional allopathic medicine since 1987, which is when I began my residency program. My career hence has spanned over 3 decades. Over that time, I would see patients with an ever-increasing myriad of health conditions. Of course, my specialty is obstetrics and gynecology, but many women would use me as their primary care provider, much to my reluctance. Nevertheless, as I began to acquaint myself with their histories, I began to see a distressing trend. More of my patients were presenting with chronic conditions and ailments, and at younger ages. Some would see their PCPs regularly with no apparent improvement in their health. I became increasingly disillusioned with what we know as the healthcare system. Close to my heart is my concern regarding our ever-increasing maternal mortality rates. America has the highest maternal mortality rates than any civilized country. That is unacceptable. So here are some data per the CDC. 6 in 10 Americans live with at least one chronic disease, like heart disease, stroke, cancer, or diabetes. These and other chronic diseases are classified as non-communicable diseases, or NCG, which are the leading cause of death and disability in America. They are also a leading driver of healthcare costs in the amount of $3.5 million annually. According to the World Health Organization, as of 2018, non-communicable diseases kill 41 million people each and every year, equivalent to 71% of all deaths globally. Each year, 15 million people die from non-communicable diseases between the ages of 30 and 69 years of age. Over 85% of these are premature deaths occur in low and middle income countries. Cardiovascular diseases account for most non-communicable deaths, or 17.9 million people annually, followed by cancer, 9 million, respiratory diseases, 3.9 million, and diabetes, 1.6 million. These four groups of diseases account for over 80% of all premature communicable deaths. Non-communicable diseases affect all ages. 30% of children today suffer from non-communicable diseases. Nearly 43 million children under the age of 5 are overweight as of 2008. This was more prevalent in non-Hispanic blacks than any other race. 1.5 billion adults 20 and older were overweight in 2008. If you practice medicine for any period of time, this is not new. But how can we call this system of medicine a healthcare system? Nothing about our current system of medicine resembles health. Our current healthcare system would be more correctly classified as a sick care system. How did we get to this point where many of us are labeled with chronic diseases? Many of these chronic diseases are managed with pharmaceuticals that may or may not support the condition in the short term. Now, the medicines help to stabilize disease and may decrease symptoms. But are they resolving the illness and making the patient better? Can we say our current model of medicine is facilitating a cure for our patients? As opposed to looking at the disease, how do I look at the patient to determine where the dysfunction is occurring in terms of different kinds of systems like the gut, hormones, energy production, your immune system? Can we truly say our patients are then healthy? Our current model is based on an acute care delivery system, which we have become very skilled at providing. We can no longer utilize that same model of acute care to support the rapid deterioration of the health of our patients. We apply layer upon layer of new technology and create layers of new financial dependence on the healthcare system in the quest of simply suppressing symptoms at the expense of never looking for underlying causes. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and yet expect a different outcome. My objective is to share with you an evolving perspective as to the manifestation, initiation, and ultimately the resolution of disease. Let's review the definition of health. According to the World Health Organization, as of 1948, health is being in a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Webster's definition: the condition of being sound in body, mind, or spirit, especially freedom from physical disease or pain. A condition in which someone or something is thriving or doing well. At times during my history taking of a patient, when I ask if they have any medical problems, their response may be, "I'm healthy." Then I look at their meds list and I notice some medications. I inquire, "Why the meds?" The response, "My fill in the blank condition, it's under control." We have a lowered expectation regarding what health looks like. Health is regulation, resilience, and adaptation to life's stressors. I like the concept that bioregulatory medicine offers. It views the body as a living system and a matrix of interconnectedness that encompasses physical, mental, and emotional as well as spiritual well-being. When the body is functioning properly, it is a magnificent, self-regulating biosystem of mind, body, and spirit. Our goal as health professionals is to support or restore that self-regulating state of well-being and self-healing. I was exposed to the Institute of Functional Medicine, where practitioners are taught a model of care that is an individualized, patient-centered, science-based approach that empowers patients and practitioners to work together to address the underlying causes of disease and promote wellness. It requires a detailed understanding of each patient's genetic, biochemical, and lifestyle factors and leverages that data to direct personalized treatment plans that lead to improved patient outcomes. By addressing root cause rather than symptoms, practitioners become oriented to identifying the complexity of disease. They may find one condition has many different causes. And likewise, one cause may result in many different conditions. As a result, functional medicine treatment targets the specific manifestation of disease in each individual. What does that interaction look like? Okay, patient comes into your office with symptoms of despair, insomnia, decreased libido, poor appetite. She just lost her job. She's overwhelmed with financial responsibilities. Your working diagnosis as a provider would be depression, correct? With the current insurance model, we don't have the luxury of time to dive deep into her problems. The patient, however, wants help now. She wants to feel better now so she can function. So, more than likely, your knee-jerk reaction would be to prescribe an antidepressant, for example, Prozac. Believe it or not, depression is not a Prozac deficiency. Depression is the label that we give to people that present with those symptoms. It's not the cause of those symptoms. We also have to satisfy the insurance company with an ICD-10 code. Our overarching goal as we assess our patients is to determine the cause of why they get the symptoms they present with. This is the ultimate challenge as we practice individualized medicine that address root cause resolution. From a functional perspective, her depression could be due to Hashimoto's, exacerbated by eating gluten, hence the hypothyroidism is worsened. It could be due to poor eating habits. The patient has reflux, requiring antacids, which has resulted in vitamin B12 deficiency contributing to depression. Maybe she has vitamin D deficiency, which can also contribute to depression. Maybe due to frequent antibiotic use, now she has an altered gut flora. Maybe she eats too much sushi and now has mercury poisoning, or maybe she does not eat fish and has omega-3 deficiency. Or she has prediabetes because she eats too many ding-dongs, donuts, and French fries. All of these things can cause depression. Our job is to figure out what the root cause or causes may be and facilitate resolution. Okay, let's recap. We know there is a global problem in which non-communicable diseases are on the rise. What is disconcerting is that this is the first generation in which the children will succumb to disease before the parents. We are beginning to understand what health is, and in order to achieve health, it is important to support the body's innate ability to move toward health versus disease. There has to be a paradigm shift in what that process looks like. We need to begin to understand how the body functions. Thus, when a patient presents to us with a dysfunction, we can begin to address the dysfunction with a different set of tools. It's like peeling the layers of an onion to resolve the root cause of the dysfunction. A diagnosis can be the result of more than one cause. As the earlier example elucidated, that depression can be caused by many different factors, including inflammation. Likewise, a cause such as inflammation may lead to a number of different diagnoses, including depression. The precise manifestation of each cause depends on the individual's genes, environment, and lifestyle, and only treatments that address the right cause will have lasting benefit beyond symptom suppression. We tend to live in silos with a reductionist concept of the practice of medicine. We will not be able to understand anything about life if we think of it as a snapshot. We must think of life and health as a dynamic process. I learned a long time ago that the body has no fences. Every body part is connected to another part down to the cellular level. These cellular connections must function as a coordinated unit to facilitate their intended purposes. Okay, let's break this down even further. There's only one disease. Yes, we have many labels for the complexities of symptoms that patients present with. We have to sign an ICD-10 diagnosis code in our current paradigm for billing purposes. But from a fundamental perspective, there's only one disease. That disease is cellular malfunction. There are not thousands of different diseases, but only one disease: malfunctioning cells. Let's make sure we're on the same page. Humans are complex organisms made up of trillions of cells, each with their own structure and function. Scientists concluded that the average human body contains approximately 37.2 trillion cells. The life cycle of a cell is a dynamic process. In most growing cells, there are 4 phases of growth, proceeding successively, taken from 10 to 20 hours, depending on the cell type and developmental state. Cells that are no longer needed are a threat to the organism are destroyed by a tightly regulated cell suicide process known as programmed cell death or apoptosis. Understand that our bodies are ever evolving to optimize the functionality of the 37,000 billion biochemical reactions that occur per second in the human body. Think about the enormity of that process. Put simply, if the cells that make up your body are healthy, then you are healthy. Remember, we have to disrupt the paradigm of the current disease model. The status quo will no longer suffice. Let's review. One disease: malfunctioning cells at the microscopic level. Okay, if disease begins due to malfunctioning cells, why do the cells begin to malfunction? There are only 2 reasons. The body, in its innate wisdom, has encoded in its genome everything it needs to function and thrive. However, when the cells do not have the myriad of nutrients required to facilitate the processing of the 37,000 billion biochemical reactions, then the cells begin to dysfunction. Hence, nutrient deficiency is one etiology of cellular malfunction. What nutrients do the cells need to function? First of all, a nutrient is anything that provides nourishment essential for growth and the maintenance of life. This encompasses micro and macronutrients. There are 6 essential nutrients that are required for optimal cell function: carbohydrates, fats, proteins, amino acids, vitamins, minerals, and water. Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are primarily components of food. Some essential nutrients are required for cellular function but cannot be produced by the human body. As such, must be taken exogenously via supplementation. Cause number 2, overwhelming toxicity. First of all, there are about 84,000 chemicals currently on the market. And we come into contact with many of them every single day. But of those 84,000 chemicals, only about 1% of them have been studied for safety. To compound that fact, in the Pacific Ocean is an enigma called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Now, this patch was found accidentally during an expedition in 1997. It's a collection of debris twice the size of Texas, also known as the Pacific Trash Vortex. This is a result of human waste. What is happening in our wildlife, friends, in nature, is also happening in our bodies. This is a whale that succumbed to all of the toxic debris that was in his environment. As humans, we rely heavily on the body's ability to detoxify the myriad of chemicals and toxins that we are exposed to on a daily basis. Hence, the importance of a healthy, functioning liver. By way of review, there are 2 main phases of hepatic detoxification, phase 1 and phase 2. Some authorities have labeled a 3rd phase, which relates to elimination of processed toxins via the bile, stool, urine, and skin. Now, hepatic detoxification is an arduous and physiologically demanding task that the body has to go through daily. Did you know that the liver processes 1.4 liters of blood every minute? The average person has 4 to 5 liters of blood. In totality, about 10% of our body weight is blood. So the role of the liver: it activates and removes toxic substances. It extracts from the blood the residues and waste material resulting from the cellular breakdown and transforms them so they can be excreted by the intestines or kidneys. It eliminates waste products and toxic metabolites. And it is a source of Kupffer cells, which filter and destroy foreign invaders such as bacteria, fungi, viruses, and cancerous cells. So we can postulate that the body is unable to detoxify and eliminate the myriad of toxins that we are exposed to over time. There is an overwhelming burden of chemicals, toxins, we can even say pathogens, that perseverate in the body. Now we have the second cause of cellular malfunction in the form of cellular toxicity. The body then responds by becoming inflamed. This inflammation initiates the acute phase response. Now, I know this is by way of review. An inflammatory stimulus results in activation of macrophages and monocytes that release cytokines. The cytokines act on the liver to stimulate production of acute phase proteins, for example, C-reactive protein. Cytokines, together with acute phase proteins, generate a systemic response with neuroendocrine, metabolic, hematologic, and biochemical changes. Now, let's make sure we understand what are cytokines. Now, that's a term that has been exhausted since the emergence of SARS-CoV-2. Cyto is Greek for cell. Kainos, Greek for movement. So, cytokines are cell signaling molecules that aid cell-to-cell communication in immune response and stimulate the movement of cells towards sites of inflammation, infection, and trauma. From a clinical perspective, one marker we can utilize to determine if our patient is toxic is a C-reactive protein. Now, this is a clinical nugget. You need to write this down. The C-reactive protein, many of us don't do that because of the cost. When your patient is toxic, they tend to be inflamed systemically. So C-reactive protein is a marker suggesting evidence of an inflammatory process existing in the body. Now, keep in mind, this is a non-specific marker of inflammation that is actually produced by the liver when signaled by a cytokine called IL-6 or interleukin-6. It is also called an acute phase reactive protein. So hence, order the high sensitivity C-reactive protein. It is more sensitive. Let's break the concept of cellular malfunction down further. 6 pathways exist between health and disease through which the health of our cells can change for better or worse. We can become healthy or sick through the following pathways. Number 1, nutrition. You are what you eat. We must learn how to select and prepare the types of foods that will enable our cells to function at their best. Pathway number 2, physical. Our cells and bodies need physical maintenance, just like an automobile. Do you have enough exercise, rest, sunlight, and fresh air? Pathway number 3, genetics. Genes affect our cells. We must learn how to optimize our genetic potential and avoid genetic damage. Pathway number 4, psychological. The body and mind are inseparably connected. They are one and the same. The way we react to life events and respond to our thoughts and emotions directly affect ourselves. Pathway number 5, medical. Modern medicine kills and injures millions of people every year. We must learn how medicine affects ourselves and make educated decisions about which treatment we need and which we don't. And pathway number 6, toxins. Now, a toxin is a substance that interferes with normal cellular function, thereby causing malfunction, which is disease. We must learn where toxins are found and avoid them. The challenge as health professionals is to support our patients, clients, as we navigate through the various pathways that allow the cells to exist in an environment that promotes illness or dis-ease. This is where functional medicine shines, as it provides a platform for us to dive into the root causes of a condition. We are not just treating the symptoms, which may provide momentary relief or remission of the presenting complaint. However, if at the biochemical and physiological level, the cells are not nourished, or whatever triggered the decline in that person's health has not been addressed, the person will continue to spiral down from a health perspective. Now, you may have on the surface level addressed one symptom, but that temporary solution may cause another symptom to surface and or allow that person's disease to continue, never addressing the etiology of its presentation. This process can be a daunting task. As such, we as health professionals need to have a dedication to unroofing the layers of complexity that a patient presents with. One of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is 3 John, the 1st chapter, the 2nd verse. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospers. Health is our birthright as children of God. We have been blessed to play a monumental role to serve our patients toward that birthright of health. The ascertaining of health is not a destination. It is a journey. And it is a duty to keep the body in good health. We have to set the expectations of each encounter with our patients. We as health professionals must develop a unique set of skills that will empower our patients to actively co-participate with the plan of care and intervention. This process must also involve the family. This is an intentional process and a time-consuming process, both on the part of the patient and the health professional. The ultimate goal of the process is to peel away the layers of complexity as we work to address resolution of the root cause and causes of the manifestations of the cellular malfunction. The current allopathic acute care model ascribes to the concept that for every ill, there's a pill. For every bug, there is a drug. For every infection, there is an injection. Chemo and radiation for every mutation, and when in doubt, cut it out. As we can see, that is no longer working. Okay, I really want to share another concept about cellular malfunction that I believe is a game changer in our practice of medicine. In May of 2014, the Journal of Mitochondrion published a sentinel paper by Dr. Robert Navio titled Metabolic Features of the Cell Danger Response. The cell danger response is the evolutionarily conserved metabolic response that protects cells and hosts from harm. It is triggered by encounters with chemical, physical, or biological threats that exceed the cellular capacity for homeostasis. It is crucial to understand these threats also include emotional as well as existential threats. Existential crisis may include guilt about something, losing a loved one in death, or facing the reality of one's own death, or feeling socially unfulfilled. The resulting metabolic mismatch between available resources and functional capacity produces a cascade of changes in cellular electron flow, oxygen consumption, redox potential, membrane fluidity, lipid dynamics, bioenergetics, protein folding and aggregation, vitamin availability, etc. Whew, that's a mouthful. I strongly recommend that you get this paper and read it repetitively, as Dr. Navio presents novel concepts that support the etiology of chronic disease at the cellular level. Okay, so let's break down the basic concepts of the cell danger response. I hope that you are beginning to understand that disease begins due to malfunction of the cell. The cells malfunction due to nutrient deficiencies and overwhelming toxicity. But we know that the body innately has wisdom and wants to move toward health. As such, the body has to know how to respond to the prevailing threat. The cells have a limited number of ways to respond to those threats. Dr. Navio suggests evolutionary selection preserves similar cellular responses to diverse forms of threat. Basically, the cells have similar responses to a multiplicity of diverse threats. The cell danger response is activated when the cell is under attack. Remember, the assault may be microbial, physical, chemical, or psychological. This activation produces a series of inflammatory responses that, if not resolved, will lead to the development of chronic disease. Now, there's a mixture of factors that determine which disease may develop, to include, but not limited to, genetic predisposition, epigenetic influences, and one's own exposome. The mitochondria of the cell have evolved to be the principal conductor of the cell danger response. The cell danger response is coordinated in the brain via chemosensory integration of whole body and microbiome metabolism. Now remember, the body has no fences. Everything is connected. Abnormal persistence of the cell danger response leads to altered organ function and behavior and results in chronic disease. Ladies and gentlemen, I dropped the mic. Once we are able to decipher where in the pathway of the cell danger response our patient's dysfunction exists, we should be able to support their unique biochemistry and physiology such that the body will move toward healing and ultimately vibrant health. I think that's a wonderful thing that we should all strive to achieve for our patients. It's also satisfying as a provider when we see our patients not only surviving, but thriving. That alone will minimize practitioner burnout, and that's a subject for another conference. Okay, now this slide is very complicated, and it will take time for us to unpack and understand the nuances of the cell danger response. That is why I am proposing my first call to action. I'm organizing a forum in which we as practitioners will come together in support of our educational efforts to understand how to care for our patients from a more functional perspective. We have to embrace the concept of community to combat these overwhelming adverse determinants of health. If you're interested in being involved, please email me at drhiggie@sbcglobal.net. You see that on the screen. Or you can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/groups /the called practitioner. Okay, back to the cell danger response. Our mitochondria spend their life cycling through 4 phases of the cell danger response. The normal working mitochondrion exhibits these characteristic traits. So normal healthy mitochondria are involved in redox reactions, transferring electrons from hydrogen and oxygen into water and producing ATP for energy and activity. Physical activity helps to stimulate the normal sleep-wake circadian rhythm. By the end of the day, ATP breaks down into adenosine, which is a signal of lower energy to initiate sleep. This cycle will produce autophagy, which is non-inflammatory cell repair and recycling. Autophagy is a term used to describe a healthy debris cleanup and repair of old and damaged cells. Cell danger response number 1. Once the proteins on the surface of the mitochondria sense a voltage change, it's interpreted as, oh no, something's stealing my energy. During this stress, the mitochondria will fragment within 5 minutes. ATP and oxygen is pumped out of the mitochondria into the cytoplasm of the cell. It will decrease its use of oxygen, which will lower ATP production. The citric acid cycle will shut down, shifting pyruvate to make lactate instead. The buildup of lactate causes pain. It will shift from redox metabolism state that is used for the citric acid cycle towards using glycolysis. Now, this is a self-protective mode that is pro-inflammatory, which is necessary to stimulate immunity to kill a pathogen threat. Cell danger response number 2. The triggers of the danger have been addressed and removed. The mitochondria are no longer receiving signals of voltage changes. Now it's time for the mitochondria to bring in the nutrients needed, such as amino acids, B vitamins, minerals, to restore its normal redox functioning to maximize ATP production. This is the proliferation stage, which is anti-inflammatory. Cell danger response number 3. Lactate will now shift back to pyruvate, which then is used to fuel the citric acid cycle to produce electrons that ultimately go into the electron transport chain and undergo oxidative phosphorylation that uses oxygen as the final electron acceptor into the ATP production process. The normal circadian rhythm and sleep is restorative. You should wake up feeling refreshed and rested. The cells have now completed the cycle, defended the host, and healing has occurred. The cell danger response represents a metabolic model of health and healing cycles. Okay, take a breath. Health is a dynamic process that requires regular cycling of wakeful activity and restorative sleep. The healing or damage cycle is activated when the cellular stress exceeds the capacity of restorative sleep to repair and restore normal cell-cell communication. How many of you ask your patients about their sleep hygiene? Clinical nugget. Did you know that the brain shrinks about 60% during restful sleep? This occurs to allow the lymphatic system to function optimally to drain toxins from the brain. Okay, back to the cell danger response. I love the way Dr. Navio distills the process of health. He says, without healing, multicellular life on Earth would not exist. Without healing, one injury predisposes to another, leading to disability, chronic disease, accelerated aging, and death. In this study, Dr. Navio and his team were able to define the healing cycle in metabolic terms and reframe the pathophysiology of chronic illness as the result of metabolic signaling abnormalities that block healing and cause the normal stages of the cell danger response to persist abnormally. Once an injury occurs, active process through the stages of healing is driven by changes in cellular metabolism and the cell's use of available fuel for defense, repair, and recovery. According to Dr. Navio, over 100 chronic illnesses can be organized into the 3 persistent stages of the cell danger response. Reframing the pathogenesis of chronic illness in this way permits new research to focus on novel therapies to unblock the healing cycle and restore health when other approaches have failed. I hope my mission has been accomplished regarding laying out the basics of the function of the cell and manifestation of chronic disease due to cellular malfunction. Once again, the body has the innate ability to recover and heal from acute assaults. Health is our inalienable birthright. However, many of our patients are stuck in various aspects of the cell danger response, and as such, chronic illness develops and may persist. So what is the answer for our patients stuck in this crisis? How do we support our patients on their journey toward optimal health and wellness from a functional perspective? It first starts with a paradigm shift in their thought process. You have to choose to live. Health is a choice. This must be emphasized. One cannot rely on the doctor, the healthcare system, to tunnel from illness to health. My father would say that we are killing ourselves with our teeth. We must learn to eat to live and not live to eat. We have to guide our patients along that same path. Food is indeed medicine. However, food can also be poison. It is your choice. We need to eat clean, which means organic, non-GMO, grass-fed, free-range, food without dyes and preservatives, and long multi-syllabic words that we cannot even pronounce. Our bodies were not meant to handle the onslaught of the multiple chemicals and xenobiotics that exist in modern times. we must understand how our food is produced, where it is produced. We must read labels and understand the nuances of food labeling practices and government regulations regarding that industry. We must drink clean water using BPA-free containers. However, glass and stainless steel containers are preferred. We must exercise, get plenty of sunlight. We must minimize mental and physical stress and stressors. Sometimes this may entail shrinking your circle of influence. Remove toxic people and toxic emotions from your sphere. The totality of health includes physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, ecological health, collective health, and sense of oneness. I want to end with a spotlight on my favorite nutrient. Each cell needs about 16 vitamins and about 80 minerals to serve as cofactors. It will be optimal to obtain these nutrients from our food. However, our food is nutrient depleted for many reasons. Now, I have a vitamin and mineral panel set up that I obtain on all of my patients as a part of their functional assessment. That includes, but is not limited to, vitamin A, beta-carotene, vitamin B12, vitamin B2, vitamin B1, vitamin B6, zinc, magnesium, copper, and iron panel, selenium, and my favorite of all, vitamin D. Let's talk about vitamin D. Vitamin D is a vitamin prohormone, which can be taken exogenously from the diet or supplements, or can be synthesized cutaneously through the action of sunlight on the skin. Most people get vitamin D from the sun as UVB rays that penetrates the skin down into the dermis, where the cholesterol derivative 7-dihydrocholesterol is converted to pre-vitamin D3. Then, finally into vitamin D3. Then, it is transported to the liver, and the 25-hydroxyl OH group is added. Vitamin D is stored in the body as 25-hydroxyl D. Vitamin D is fat soluble and as such is stored in the adipose tissue. When the vitamin D is needed, it goes to the immune system or kidneys and is converted to 1,25-hydroxy D3. Now that 1,25-hydroxy D3 is the active form of vitamin D. But guess what? This active form can be deactivated. High fructose corn syrup can accelerate the inactivation of vitamin D. Other sugars may as well, resulting in lower vitamin D levels and inefficient activity of vitamin D. Well, what is the function of vitamin D and why is it so important? Every single cell in our body has receptors for vitamin D. As a prohormone, it sends messages to the cells to guide function. The active metabolite of vitamin D is involved in calcium and phosphate metabolism and exerts a large number of biological effects. Vitamin D3 inhibits parathyroid hormone secretion, adaptive immunity, and cell proliferation, and at the same time promotes insulin secretion, innate immunity, and cellular differentiation. Therefore, vitamin D3 has been shown to have dual function. It is an important steroid hormone for the regulation of body calcium homeostasis, and an essential organic compound that has been shown to have a crucial effect on immune responses. The study participants here in this study were from Ireland. And the conclusion is that vitamin D deficiency is common across all age groups in the Irish population. But it is particularly prevalent in those who are obese, have darker skin, and are older. Okay, but I've never been to Ireland. A National Institute of Health survey from 2011 conducted showed that Blacks and Hispanics consistently manifest lower serum concentrations of 25-hydroxy-D than non-Hispanic whites, primarily because increased skin pigmentation inhibits cutaneous synthesis of cholecalciferol, the metabolic precursor to 25-hydroxy-D. So this is a graphic presentation of the differences of vitamin D levels among Black, Hispanic, and white in the study group. As you can see, Blacks had the highest rates of vitamin D deficiency across all levels. But why should we be concerned? There has been emerging circumstantial evidence from studies of COVID-19 patient demographics that link low serum vitamin D levels with an increased COVID-19 disease severity. In fact, over 270 further studies on the topic have appeared in the peer-reviewed literature since April of 2020. Data from randomized controlled trials have demonstrated reduction in ICU admission and mortality amongst hospitalized COVID-19 patients receiving vitamin D supplementation. There is a wealth of literature that describes the mechanisms of action of vitamin D and how it mediates these positive effects on both SARS-CoV-2 infection and COVID-19 disease severity. The findings of these diverse studies highlight the urgency of vitamin D correction as a critical priority in the protection of vulnerable groups from the worst effects of COVID-19. Okay, here comes the clinical nugget. Vitamin D levels in the form of 25-hydroxy-D must be a part of your routine assessment. The goal is to achieve vitamin D levels between 60 and 80 nanograms per milliliter, depending on the patient's health goals and clinical presentation. Vitamin D levels greater than 60 can prevent 80% of breast cancer. Often, to achieve adequate levels, oral supplementation is required. My favorite vitamin D supplement has 5,000 international units of cholecalciferol and vitamin K in the form of K1 and K2. Vitamin K directs the vitamin D. Ideally, they should be paired. The optimal dose is based on your patient's response to supplementation. We must measure, we must monitor, we must adjust and control. Regarding supplementation, you want to be able to control what your patients are consuming. Once a deficiency has been identified, you as a practitioner want to have confidence regarding the quality of the repletion that you recommend, as well a track record as to the performance of the nutraceutical. I use an online dispensary in which my patients are able to purchase the nutraceutical that I have recommended as a part of their care plan. I am also able to monitor their compliance with that aspect of the plan. These are things that we can share in the practitioner support forum as you pivot to a more functional intervention with your patients. I have placed the link to the dispensary on this slide. I now speak to you as health professionals. What is your self-care regimen? Are you getting enough sleep and exercise? Are you embracing healthy lifestyle practices to optimize your quality of longevity? My words for the year 2020, which I keep adding, are pivot, level up, embrace agility, and become resilient. According to Thomas Edison, the doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will instruct his or her patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, which we will celebrate his birthday on Monday, we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We are made to live together because of the interrelated structure of reality. To your health.